Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm John. Today I'm going to share with you how to create a procedural building in Blender3D 2.93. Before we dive into Blender, let me break down what we are going to do in this tutorial. First, we are going to create all the 3D elements that we need to clone later. And then we can start to clone the 3D element we created to form a wall using geometry node. Then next, we are going to replace the top row of the windows with the roof, and the bottom row of the windows replaced with the ground floor, and then the right column here replaced with the pillar. Then after we complete one side of wall, we can start to duplicate the wall and put it together. After putting it together, we can start to link it so that when we change the width, height and length properties, it will move together. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, first select all and delete everything, and then press Shift A and add a plane. Rotate it 90 degrees. Press N to toggle the properties panel, then change the dimension to 1 meter by 1 meter. And then press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Press Ctrl A again and apply the rotation. And then press numpad 1 to see the front view. Then we can start to modeling the windows and door on this plane. We can treat this as a canvas, so you can modeling your own design on the plane and don't have to follow me. Just one important thing that we need to aware. In order to make us easy to do the calculation later in the geometry node, no matter what we model on this plane, we need to remain the size of the plane in 1 meter by 1 meter, x-axis 1 meter and z-axis 1 meter. And I'm going to fast forward the modeling part, so if you don't want to model this yourself, you can also download my asset file in the description below. After finish the pillar, make sure the dimension of the z-axis is remain to 1. And then remember to press Ctrl A and apply the scale. After finish all the modeling, we need to move the origin of the 3D element to the bottom left back corner here. So press Tab and go into edit mode. Select the vertices, press Shift S and select the cursor to selected. Press Tab again and set the origin to 3D cursor, and then we are going to do the same thing for all the elements here. Okay, and now we can dive into the geometry node, split the screen, and go to geometry node editor. In the 3D viewport, press Shift S again and move the cursor to world origin. Then press Shift A and add a cube. And actually you can add whatever mesh you want, it's not important at all. In the geometry node editor, click new to apply a geometry node to the cube. And then press Shift A, go to Mesh Primitive and add a grid. Disconnect it. Then press Shift A again to add a point instance. In the object column, we use the eyedropper to select our windows. And then press Shift A again and add a transform node. Add it before the point instance. Then rotate the x-axis 90 degrees. And now you can see our windows is overlapping together. The reason is because if we refer to our grid, our instance object is actually cloned on every vertices on the grid. And currently the grid size is set to 1 meter by 1 meter. which is the size X and Y here. And if you remember, our windows is all made in 1 meter by 1 meter as well. That means currently we have 2 meter by 2 meter squeezing on a 1 meter grid. So in order to fix this issue, we need to increase our grid size to 2 meter by 2 meter. And now it's stick together. That means every time when we change the value of vertices X and Y, the grid size has to be 1 point smaller than the vertices. Let's say we change the vertices X to 6. Then we have to change the side X to 5 as well. Then only it will stick together. But this is very inconvenient if we need to change both of the value manually every time. So in order to make it easy, we can connect the vertices X to the group input. Please connect it to the blank dot here, don't connect it to the geometry. And then go to the group tab here, select the vertices X and rename it to width. And now we want to add a math node. Press Shift A and go to utilities and add a math node. Connect the width from group input to the math node and then change the function to subtract. And then in the value column, change it to 1. Then connect the value to size X. That means now we are sending our vertices X value to the group input, and we can now adjust the value in the modifier properties here. And when we change the value in modifier properties, the value will send to this math node from the group input to the math node here, and then -1 and send the value to side X. So no matter what number you put for the width, the number will always -1 and send to the side X here. And now we want to do the same thing for vertices Y. Connect the vertices Y to the group input. Go to group tab, select the vertices Y and rename it to height. In the geometry node editor, select the math node and duplicate it. Connect the height from the group input to the math node. Then connect the value to size Y. And now we can play with the width and height at the modifier properties. And you can see everything is stick together perfectly. Okay, next we can start to replace the top of the row here with our roof. So in order to do that, press Shift A, go to point and add a point separate node. Then add it before the point instance. The function of this point separate node is allow us to separate the point on this grid into 2 groups, and then we are able to assign 2 different instant objects to the grid. Like for example, now we only have the windows gone on the grid. Then the separate point node is allow us to separate the point on the grid into 2 groups. Then we can replace another group of points with our roof. But of course, it's not just limited to 2 only. If you want to separate more points, we can actually adding more point separate node into the node 3. Okay, now we can name the mask roof. And next, we need to add an attribute separate XYZ. Then now we want to get the position of every point on the grid. So to do it, tap position in the vector column. And next, we need to create new attribute for result X, Y, and Z. Let's name it PX for X-axis, PY for Y-axis, and PG for Z-axis. That basically means we are giving a name to our XYZ axis, and then later when we want to select which row we want to replace the instant object, we can call out the name later. We can call out the name here, so Blender will know which axis we are select. Okay, now we want to start select the row that we want to replace. So to do it, we have to add an attribute compare node. Add it before the point separate node. Then the axis we want to select now is in Z axis, because we are going to select the entire top of the row here. So we can put PG to our A attribute column here. So now Blender know we want to select all points on Z axis. But Blender still don't know which row I want to select. So to let Blender know this, we can change the B attribute to float, and then we output the result to roof. Now we can play with the number in B attribute to select the row we want. And now we can start to include our roof to the geometry tool. So duplicate the point instance, select our roof, then add a join geometry, connect it, and now we have our roof. And now we can try to increase the height of the building. And we can see the roof is duplicate to 2, and if we keep increase the height, the more it will duplicate. So in order to fix this issue, we can go back to attribute compare node. Then now we want the height of the building, the value here, to link together with the float in the B attribute here. So press Shift A and add a group input. Connect the height to the B attribute here, and then press Shift A again, go to Utilities, and add a Math node. Then we change the function to divide, and the value change to 2. So we are going to divide 2, and then duplicate the Math node again. Then we change the function to add, and we can start adjust the add value until our roof appear and remain only 1. Okay, now we can start to adjust the height again. And we can see the roof is remain 1 and keep stick at the top row. Okay, now we have done the roof, and next we want to do the exactly same thing for the ground floor. So now go back to the point separate node here, and now we want to separate another group of points. So I'm going to duplicate the point separate node, and we need to give the mask another name. We can name it ground floor. Then duplicate the point instance and use the eyedropper to select the ground floor element. Connect it to the geometry tool and connect this to join geometry. And then go to the attribute compare, duplicate it. Then change the result to G floor. I'm going to copy this. Just hover it and press Ctrl C to copy it and Ctrl V to paste here. And then change the greater than to less than, so it will select the opposite side of the axis. And now we can select 3 of the node here and press Shift D to duplicate it. Then connect the add value to the B attribute here. And now you can see all our windows have been replaced by the ground floor, and the reason is because we are now using the math node for the roof. This is the math node for roof, and the roof is actually positioned at the positive G axis. Let me draw something to explain. So this is positive G axis and this is negative G axis. So now the roof is at the positive G axis, and we are using the math node here. We are just duplicate from the math node for roof, and the ground floor should be at the negative G axis. So to reflect the axis, we need to add another math node before add. So duplicate this and change the function to multiply, then change the value to -1. So that means we want to multiply -1 to reflect it. So now we can try to adjust the add value to show our ground floor. And now we can try to play with the height. And you can see now the ground floor is stick perfectly at the bottom. Then next we want to include the pillar into the grid. So what we need to do is we need to select the column in the right here and then replace it with the pillar. So to do it, we are going to do the same step again. Go to point separate node for the ground floor, this one, then duplicate it and rename the mask to pillar. Then duplicate the attribute compare and change the result to pillar as well. So hover this, Ctrl C to copy, and hover the result here and Ctrl V to paste. And now we actually want to select the point on x-axis. So in order to do it, we need to change the PG to PX. So now Blender will know we want to select the point on x-axis and then change the less than to greater than. Then we can start to add our pillar. Duplicate the point instance. Use the eyedropper to select our pillar. Connect it to geometry tool and join geometry. Then try to adjust the width. And now again we can see we get the same problem with the roof just now. So to fix it again, we need to do the same step again. Go back to the attribute compare node for the roof. Duplicate 3 of the node here. Disconnect the height from the value and connect the width to the value, because we need to get the value of the width to link with the attribute for the pillar. And then we link the add node to the attribute for the pillar. And then we fix it when we adjust the width now it stick together. And then next, I think you guys already know what I'm going to do. Now we are going to replace the pillar in the top right corner with the roof corner. This is our roof corner. So to do this, again, we need to duplicate the point separate node. Then rename the mask to roof corner. And then press Shift A, go to attribute and add an attribute map. Then change the function to multiply. Then we put roof in the attribute A and put pillar for the attribute B. Then output the result to roof corner. By doing this, that means we are selecting the intersection point in between the pillar and the roof. And now you can see the corner of the roof is empty, and the reason is because we still don't include any geometry to the geometry tool in the point separate. So now duplicate another point instance and then use the eyedropper to select the roof corner, connect it to the geometry tool and the join geometry. And now we done the roof. We have the corner here. And next, I actually want to mix two different 3D elements for the ground floor. So we have to select the ground floor element that we want. Select two of these, then press M to make a collection. Then go back to the geometry node, go to the point instance for ground floor. This one. Click collection, untick the whole collection and select the ground floor. So now we have two different 3D elements in the ground floor, and we can play with the seed to choose the matching we want. So now we have done the first wall. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to duplicate another 3 walls and link it together. So if you like my video, please subscribe and see you next week. Bye.